can't think of any more human activity than conducting science experiments.
The game I play is a very interesting one. It's imagination in a tight straitjacket.
The beauty of a living thing is not the atoms that go into it, but the way those atoms are put together.
What I always think should be the basis of education is not answers, but questions. We should teach kids how to question.
Welcome to BLab Codes. My name is Samit Siddiqui. In this abridged episode, Brooke talks to us about the role of society and our biology in predisposing us towards STEM, that's science, technology, engineering, mathematics, or HAS, which is the humanities and the social sciences. To listen to the full episode, go to blabcodes.com and subscribe to our podcast. And also like our Facebook page, damn it.
Yeah, so with my PhD, I guess stayed in the realm of educational psychology, but I started to, I guess, turn my focus to looking at gender differences in science, technology and mathematics in terms of female representation in university and careers. And so I looked at, I guess...
Why? Sorry, just a question. Why did you change your focus into that specifically?
I guess around that time, I was really becoming quite interested in feminism and also a number of other kind of social, I guess, perspectives or sociological perspectives on things. So, during that kind of later stage of my undergraduate, there were a few kind of lecturers and few units that I did in sociology that kind of really, I guess, opened my mind further into understanding not only how the brain works, but also looking at the role of society and the way of social environments and how that impacts people's psychological lives. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. And so you're looking at these gender differences in STEM. What were some of your findings?
So one of my findings that was quite interesting was we had a longitudinal study. So we were following young Australians from when they're about 15 years of age to when they're in their first year of university. And we were looking, I guess, at how their self-perceptions and their attitudes impact upon their later choices. Because one of the main theories for why, I guess, there is that gender difference in career representation in STEM is because during high school and adolescence, girls have been found consistently to have lower self-beliefs in their abilities, even when we control for their attitudes. So even when we compare boys and girls of equal ability in mathematics and science, girls still have a far greater, I guess, worse off self-beliefs and confidence in their own abilities.
What do you think is causing that?
I think there's it's such a complex question, but I think there's probably a few different things at play. One of my thoughts is that I think as a society, I think girls are not really encouraged to be as kind of self-promoting and confident, I guess, in their own abilities in general. Mm-hmm. So I think that is potentially one of the factors at play where, I think boys in general kind of don't get the same, I'm trying to think of the word to describe it, the same kind of backlash if mm-hmm. they kind of, I don't know, say like, oh, I'm really good at this, or, right. I think we're socialized in some aspects to be a little bit more self-deprecating, a little bit more self-doubting, right. a little bit more tentative with ourselves and uncertain. So I think that's definitely one of the mechanisms. And I also think, though, there's also an aspect that science and mathematics has been traditionally held up as a more masculine kind of career option or career domain. And that, I guess, men's kind of gender differences in men and women have historically kind of centered around that, men are more analytical, they're more logical, they have greater skills that kind of match those domains, whereas women are more maybe empathic or better at communication or interpersonally, or more suited to nurturing and caregiving roles.
Right.
So I kind of wonder whether that factors in too, but it's such a hard thing to test, I guess.
Oh yeah, I could totally see the difficulty in trying to tease out the different variables that would play a role in that. And I totally agree with you. I think as a man, because for my friends who know me, I'm a big loud mouth. That's one of the reasons why I started this podcast. I just couldn't stop. I just couldn't shut up. But that's expected. I mean, if I get up on stage and I'm confident and I'm bold and I have leadership skills, people expect that of me.
Yeah.
But a female in my circumstance, there'd be a bunch of people who roll their eyes before they listen to a chick talk.
Totally. Yeah. And just kind of that, I guess, oh, she's being a bit bossy, or she's a bit of a loudmouth, or...
Yeah. And this is something, a podcast that I listen to is the Joe Rogan Experience, and he's a comedian, and he talks about, female comics, how hard it is for them to make it, because when a man gets up on stage, it's a man, but when a woman does that, nobody wants to listen to what she has to say.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of female comics that Joe Rogan was saying is that they use sexuality as a means of getting their foot into the door, where they only feel comfortable talking about sexual things. So Amy Schumer is one great example, if you follow comedy, where a lot of her jokes are like, I'm a slut, or this is what I do. Like, it's almost like playing a character, like an extreme version of herself, because she may feel like this is the only way I'm going to be accepted by the audience, by the community. So I totally see the challenges that exist between men and women, because it's like almost cultural conditioning. This is okay for men, but not so much for women.
Totally, yeah.
I guess one question I want to ask: how much do you think? And this is something that I've often had this conversation with my friends. How much do you think it's social conditioning, so cultural conditioning, as well as what we just spoke about? How much do you think is also associated with just biological differences?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I'm really glad you asked me that, actually, because I think it is such a kind of complex question and difficult to answer. And my answer to that is I don't know, because there is a fair amount of literature, I guess, in that field of looking at the biological causes, so looking at perhaps evolutionary perspectives, also looking at differences in the structure and the function of brain differences between men and women, and then also looking at the role of testosterone as a potential mechanism behind some of the differences we've been talking about today. And I think it becomes quite problematic, because I know, I guess with my PhD topic, what it is, a lot of people often come up to me and go, yeah, but that it's actually all just biological and it's innate. The answer to it is, I think, quite more complex. So the literature is inconclusive and mixed from what I've read, and the reviews and the meta-analyses on these sort of things. So there's a lot of kind of mixed evidence, so it's really tricky to say whether there's actually any kind of underlying mechanism going on for every paper that shows a relationship between, say, testosterone exposure and science and maths ability. There's another paper that doesn't find the same. So my answer to that is I'm not sure yet, and I don't think any scientist who kind of, was worth any salt should actually say they're certain about it, because I think we're not far along enough to understand it fully yet. And my worry is that we, when we kind of, I guess, overstate some of those biological explanations, because I think we can see these things, they're physical, we understand them. it's more tempting as an explanation for those gender differences, but compared to, I guess, more social causes that are a bit more wishy-washy. But I think the danger in ascribing things fully biological causes is that we end up in a bit of a situation similar to like the 19th century, where scientists were looking at phrenology and skull shape and brain size, and saying, well, the reason women aren't as intelligent and they don't go to university is because their brains are smaller than men, and this is why they're less intelligent,
Sure.
without kind of looking at the context of the situation too. And clearly in those day and ages, I guess, girls weren't having the same access to education, so of course they're not going to perform as highly on IQ tests. So I think as scientists, I think we need to be really mindful of the role that social environments play in brain development too. And in psychology and neuropsychology, we've seen all these advancements in the plasticity of the brain, and how, I guess, we know now that our exposure to different social environments has a biological impact on the brain's development and structure and function. So even if we can find, MRI studies that show, I guess, a gender difference between men and women,
you can't associate it.
Yeah.
Is it the experience or the genes?
Yeah, exactly. So exactly what you said. So it's kind of like, well, we can't even extrapolate from that whether it's an innate biological difference or whether these differences have occurred as a result of different socialization.
Yeah.
So I think it's such a complex and messy kind of research field, and my hope is that people kind of become more open to that uncertainty, and more open-minded to perspectives that may be outside of their realm of where they sit in terms of their scientific discipline.
Thanks for listening to BLab Codes. Rate and review our podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast, because it does help us spread the word. And if you like what we're doing here, then help us grow it by sharing this with a friend of a friend, or your mailman, even your mailman's mailman. We also want to hear from you, so send us questions or comments to blabcodes@gmail.com. And if you have any interesting questions or comments, then we'll talk about it on air.